So first things first, sit close to the wheel. You're just going to get the wheel barely damp. And then make sure you slam the clay down as hard as you can. I like to look at the center, pretend that I'm throwing the clay right through the center of the wheel. I missed, so I'm going to scoot it just a little bit and then give it a couple of whaps. Notice I didn't use a flat hand, I used a cupped hand to whap it. That keeps the clay round on top. I'm going to seal it down. Okay. You want to seal it down so the water doesn't get underneath. If the water gets underneath, then the clay is not going to stick. If your clay is still kind of like a round ball when you throw it down, that means it's probably not stuck, so that's when you want to like kind of give it a good whap. Okay. It doesn't matter if you use your left hand pushing forward or your right hand pushing forward, but the principle is the same. You want to make sure that your elbow is wedged kind of in your hip or in the side of your leg. That way you can use your leg muscle or your body to move forward into the clay. The way that I prefer to do it is with my right hand. I'm going to use this part of my hand right here. And I'm going to put my elbow in my hip. And I'm going to push my belly forward into the clay. As I do that, the clay kind of wants to go up. I'm just going to bring that clay up. You notice I have relaxed hands. I'm focusing the pressure on the clay. I have a force going this way, and I have a force going this way. All right. Clean a little bit of that clay off down the bottom. Okay. So now to push down, you need a downward force and a forward force. If you're using your left hand, you're going to be pressing forward with this part of your hand, pressing forward. You're going to kind of chop down with that, and grab onto your thumb, and you start at the top and you push the clay down to the wheel. Okay? You're using this part of your knuckle right here over the center of the clay. You want to keep your wrist kind of low as you press down. Press down and forward at the same time. The way that I do it is I press forward with this part of my palm here. I'm going to press down with this. You always want to put this hand on there first, that way you can have this sort of shaping the clay. And then put this hand up right next to it. Lean into the clay. This hand kind of shifts. That finger right there kind of shapes the clay. And that thumb is on top of the clay. Get rid of a little of this clay right there. And lean into the clay just to get it a little bit more centered. Once you can sort of observe your fingers or feel your fingers not kind of like moving around, then it's going to be pretty centered. Also notice that whenever I'm touching the clay, the wheel is moving. I'm also using both hands together as much as possible. Wrist low. I'm going to curl this finger like this. Okay? I don't want to use a flat finger. Flat fingers are flexible. I want a nice rigid finger. Middle finger. These fingers are here, but they're not really doing anything. They're just there for support. And I take my ring finger, middle finger, and index finger and put them on here. And then I'm going to put my face over the clay. I'm going to press down with these fingers. I pull back just a little bit with these. I don't want to like make a citrus juicer, but I want to pull back enough so that this clay right here kind of opens up a little bit. You can see that my finger is, I have like a little bump. If you look in the bottom, there's like a little bump right there. That means I'm on my side of just off center. If you have a cave like this, okay, that means you're diving in, you're pushing the clay. You need to pull the clay down. Okay, I'm going to drop it down to about 1/4 inch. Get the water out of the bottom. Stop my wheel. Take your needle tool, measure, slide your finger down, pull it out, and it should be about 1/4 inch, just like that. Okay? Don't worry about the hole will go away. Make sure when you drop the hole you check it. I noticed a lot of people last class were leaving their bottom about 1/2, 3/4 inch thick. For the cylinders exercise, I want you to go all the way down. When we get to trimming the bowl, when we get to making bowls to trim, we are purposefully going to leave more clay on the bottom, but we're also going to be using more clay so that we can make a larger thing. Okay, so now I need to open it up. So I'm going to have my wrist low. This finger is still curled like it was when I dropped the hole. I'm going to put these fingers on the inside. I'm going to pull back and I curl my fingers back like this. Okay, I'm going to open it up. I don't want to open it up wider than the original centered piece of clay. Whatever that centered piece of clay, you have to kind of remember how wide that was. Try not to open it up wider than that, okay? You need to be able to get your finger in there to do stuff, so it needs to be at least, you know, wide enough for that to fit your hand in there. When we get a little bit further along, you can make the hole smaller and try to make a really narrow cylinder if you want, but for now, it's going to be a lot easier if you keep it, you know, within a pound. You know, the opening's about as wide as your sponge, you know, all of that stuff. Okay, now I'm going to do the volcano. To do the volcano, I'm going to put my elbow back in my hip. I'm going to push forward kind of with this. I'm going to pull back with this. But I'm not like shoving it in. This is just for stability. I kind of lift. It's more of a lift and fold. Okay. You want this to be kind of round on the outside. If it's kind of like round in the other direction, I don't know, like concave, I guess, then you're shoving the clay in. You just need to fold the clay in, okay? Now I'm gonna sort of establish that groove on the inside. Whenever you're making a pole, you need a groove on the first pole, because when you do that volcano, if you open it properly and you do the volcano properly, you should have a groove on the inside to hold on to. So you can grab onto that. Whatever you do, don't make two grooves at once. If you make a groove on if you have the groove on the inside and you make another groove, it's going to rip right off. Okay. So I'm going to do half a fons. Push this finger forward just a little bit, and then this rotates down and ends up being right here. If I draw a line through the center of the clay to my belly button, my thumb, it's on the clay and it's on the other side of that line. Okay. I want this as far over here as I can. You don't move your body over here, you know, like that's not really doing much because the wheel is round. If you're moving your body around, it's not really affecting how your hand position. It's just, you're just moving around in the circle. So just put your elbow next to your body and kind of lean down onto it just a little bit. I'm not like putting all of my weight on it. I'm just kind of leaning down onto it a little bit. This goes here. I make a long C with this finger kind of sticking up. Okay, with my left hand. My middle finger, right where I touch, right there, that's going to be on the inside of the clay, right opposite this finger right here. Okay, just like that. I want these fingers to be facing me. I want this part of my hand to be pushing away. I'm going to grab on, I'm going to pull back, I'm going to push forward. I'm going to grab onto that groove. I'm going to lift it up. I want the cylinder to be slightly tapered, a little bit thinner at the top than it is at the bottom. The reason is when we get into taller things, I usually like to pull the top third of the cylinder about the thickness that I'm going to finish with, and then I pull the rest of the clay into it. That'll make a little bit more sense when we get into a little bit more clay, but if you leave a big bulk of clay here, it's going to be hard to pull through that on your second pull without collapsing your cylinder. Okay, so compress the rim. Now, a couple different ways to do it. You can just kind of support the rim like this and press down with your finger. It's going to be kind of a square rim. It's not really the best rim to drink out of. You could also just tilt your finger a little bit like that, just to give it a little bit of an angle on the inside. That'll be a little bit better. For a short cylinder like this, that'll be good. I'll show you on the next pull how to do it a little bit differently. So basically what we want to do is just make sure that isn't good, too far off. Okay, with the cylinder, Now I need to make a groove. I'm going to do it without the sponge on this pole, just so you can see what I'm doing. Actually, no, I'm going to do it with the sponge on this pole because I have to do a little bit more. I don't want to wear my fingernail out. I'm going to support on the inside with the same part of my finger that I pull with, right there. That goes down the bottom. Directly on the other side of the clay from that, I'm going to press down with my middle finger. I'm going to go up and under that finger on the inside. So this is pulling back, this is pushing forward. I get a nice groove on the outside there. Once I get a groove, again, so one groove at a time, just have one groove on the outside. I'm going to push forward, I'm going to pull back, I'm going to lift that clay up. You can see that that groove travels up the side of the cylinder. If you notice that groove disappearing, that means you're not pulling back hard enough from the inside. Okay, so you need to make sure you're pulling back hard enough to get that groove to move up the side of the cylinder. Okay, the second pull, before I do the second pull, I'm going to do the way that I really like to compress the lip because I can get a really good rim out of it. I have this elbow kind of on my leg. I'm just letting the clay go through these fingers, and then I take my fingers and do the Yellow Pages walkie fingers, and then I'm going to use this web of skin right here and press down on the rim, and that'll soften the rim really nicely and give it a good surface or a good angle to drink from. I'm going to support on the inside. I push up and under, so you can see that my fingers kind of go underneath the clay like that, so they kind of rotate. Some people will push in. I kind of like to rotate and use this finger on here. That way it doesn't get a sharp edge. The sharp edge will kind of peel off. You'll see what that means when it happens to you. Okay, second pull, or this is the third pull. Slow my wheel down just a little bit. Same position. That is going to go in the groove. That's going to go on the bump. So that's the groove, that's the bump. So that goes in the groove. That goes in the bump. My thumb also goes on the bump. Okay, I'm going to pull back, push forward. If your thumb can't fit to your hand, just tuck it in. All right, once you can connect, you connect, and then you keep making the pull. Your inside hand controls the thickness of the clay, okay? The outside hand controls the shape of the cylinder. So the outside hand guides that cylinder up and in. Another thing you should notice is as I'm pulling up, this thumb tilts down. That changes the angle of this, and that guides the clay up and in. Okay. My inside hand, as I get close to the top, kind of gives way to that outside hand and allows the cylinder to move up. Notice I'm only touching the inside of the cylinder with this point right here. If you touch with a flat finger, it's going to want to make the cylinder wide. Okay? So you want just that point on the inside. And so we'll just end the thing there, the demo there. I'll show you how to clean up the outside of the cylinder maybe in a little bit, or just individually or whatever. But that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, don't forget to compress the rim. And that's basically the cylinder right there. So.